Oh, God.
We think it was shot down because as soon as it crashed, a big fighter plane flew over the school. And, like, that's just what I think.
I think that the passengers took it down. That's what I think.
I think it was both.
At the same time, really.
That's interesting. What do you explain that?
Well, I don't know. I just think that they were attempted to do it because, I mean, I heard that "let's roll" over the radio. So they had to have been doing something, but we saw that plane like right after it happened. And we were the only ones that saw it pretty much from the school. Nobody else saw it.
Really? How long after did you guys see the fighter plane?
Like 10 seconds. Right there. It was right after.
As soon as we saw the mushroom cloud, this plane goes flying over.
The issue of eyewitnesses is a whole subject to itself. In any major crash, the human being is not a very good sensory. Their senses are easily disturbed, and furthermore, they're enhanced once the accident occurs and they hear from other people, because then they begin to integrate and to tie things together that may not have been there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a real shock.
Right in here is where the clothesline post used to be. And she was standing right here, and she watched it come right over, and it flew out that way.
A lot of people say it was shot down, and I said, did you see the plane actually fly over? And they said no. I said, how can you say that plane was shot down? I said, I stood there and I watched that plane go out. I said, if it was shot down, there would be debris falling from it, there would be a ball of fire, there would be some indication that that plane was shot down. I said, there was no indication that plane was shot down. I watched it. I mean, you know, I may have been the last person, I don't know, to see those poor people fly over, and, you know, they knowing that they were gonna die. And no matter what they say, those people are heroes, because anybody that knows they're going to die and they do everything they can to save other people are heroes, no matter who put that plane down.
I'm standing there watching on TV, and the lights flickered in the building. About that time we heard the engines roar, and we took off out of the building. As we were coming out from the office out through the building, the ground shook and we heard you know, a big boom. Looked over and saw the big ball of fire up in the air. We got there, like I said, probably within 45 seconds or a minute of impact. We were there. We were there before any firemen, any paramedics, or anybody. We were on site. When we got there, there was a plane flying up above, and he was smart. He flew straight for the sun, so you couldn't look at it and see exactly what type of plane or if it was a fighter or what it was. But, you know, we caught a glimpse of it, and as he was swinging, he was basically traveling in the same direction as the plane. I was in Atlanta, and that was this past winter. Was in Yamaha training, and I was sitting there talking. Everybody, of course, asked where you're from, introduce yourself to everybody in the classroom, and of course now we just say Shanksville, where the plane crashed, and everybody knows where we're at. So I was sitting there talking to another guy, and I was telling about, you know, he said, did you see the plane crash and whatever, was you there or anything? And I told him the whole story. And I was explaining to him about whenever we were standing in the office and the lights flickered and everything, and there was another gentleman sitting in the row in front of me that was retired from the Air Force. And as soon as he heard me say that, he immediately stopped me and he said, tell me this. And I told him, and he says, well, I'm retired from the Air Force. He said, that plane was shot down. And I said, why? And he said, because whenever the lights flickered, they zapped the radar frequency on everything before they shoot. And he said, that's why your lights flickered. Your lights didn't flicker from the impact. Your lights flickered because they zapped the radar system before they shot it.
Perhaps they did try to shoot the airplane, or maybe they did. But if they did, the airplane would either disintegrate in the air if it was hit with a weapon, or it wouldn't necessarily tip over. It'd more likely glide in. And this aircraft at least went in fairly vertical. It doesn't mean that couldn't happen, but I think it wouldn't support as much a missile shoot down as the vertical descent.
You know, I was just driving along here. It was a beautiful day. Had my window open, had this stereo on, and when I got up here almost to the stop sign, this small white plane, at the time, that's what I thought it was, went over top of me. It was so smooth, and it just glided right over me, just like that. And then I ducked, and when I looked up again, then it was the spoiler, which is what I call it, and it was tipped like this so I could really see the spoiler, and then it just banked to the right and went over and went down behind those trees. We got to watching it on TV, and they kept saying that it was a large plane, like a 757, and I was like, no. What I saw was no jet. You know, that would have blown me off the road if it went over me, you know, that close. I said, no, that wasn't it. So, like I said, about 11:30 that night, the FBI came, wanted to talk to me. They kept asking me how big the plane was. I said the plane, you know, it was small, wasn't much bigger than my van that I saw, and that it went over top of me. And he says, you don't know what a 757 looks like. And I said, you know, don't be condescending to me. You know, if you don't want to believe me, that's fine. But what I saw, I thought I should report. And you ought to know there was something else in the air at the same time this was going on, and you want to make sure maybe it was ours and not somebody else's. And then that's when he did seem to get a little nicer. Told me that it was a white Learjet. Someone was taking pictures. I said, before the crash? And he says, well, we got to go. And that was the end of it.
In my mind, you know, the possibility that Flight 93 was shot down, you know, is an incredible story. But on the other hand, I think in the minds of a lot of media people, TV producers, etc., this story that emerged instead of heroism by the passengers is a remarkable story. You know, you know, certainly it's been the basis for 2 best-selling books so far. It's, you know, was featured on Dateline, NBC, and some of these other news magazine shows several times over. You know, I'm sure, and I hate to be so crass in referring to September 11th, but I'm sure the ratings for those shows, you know, were, you know, I'm sure those were some of the most watched news magazine shows of the year. And so then I think as journalists, you know, unfortunately, it's kind of sad, but I think there's an instinct of, we have a great story here. Why would we want to, like, muck around and mess it up by coming up with a different story when people love this story?
That's the book from Todd's wife, Lisa. I haven't finished it yet, but there's a lot of information in here, especially the let's roll part, where that's from the phone call that Lisa got from her husband before he crashed, and all she heard was the let's roll, and it was silence, just like the heavens were talking to her. Have you seen the book?
This is the role the government plays in times of stress, how they view the public. Can the public stand the truth? Or shouldn't we need a legend at this point. We need a really neat story of reacting against such a dastardly act as was happening. So it's really nice and convenient to think of the Beamer story, let's roll, and that becomes just like the Alamo. And it's just one of those legends, and I'm not saying that somebody's issued an order somewhere that says don't do any more with 93, it's right where it ought to be, and leave it alone. I don't think that's true, but I think there'll be a lot of pressure to let the legend stay where it is. I would think there's some inclination that way.